Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Final Trade. I had this come through my email a couple days ago concerning my direct account with TCGplayer as a seller, and they are apparently going to be implementing a new sample process for their RI inspection. So the RI is when you sell on TCGplayer in the direct program, they send you a reimbursement invoice, an RI, and it tells you all the cards that you need to send back to them to replenish their inventory in Schenectady. And so the way that this is going to work going forward is instead of examining every single card that you send, even 5-cent cards, even stacks of hundreds of 5-cent cards, and paying labor to do that at their plants in New York, if you have a good enough history of accurate replenishment invoices in terms of sending the correct cards, the correct variants at the correct condition, and the correct quantities, then they're going to implement essentially what we call in industry a dock to stock program. And in the manufacturing industry, you do this when you buy parts from subcontractors that you use to assemble other products that you sell. And the reason it's called dock to stock is because it's as if the subcontractor delivers the parts to your shipping dock and then they go straight into your inventory stock without sending all of them through quality inspection and calorimetry or all the other types of things that you might do. Not calorimetry, calibration. All the other things you would do in an industrial atmosphere. And so it's interesting that they're doing this at TCGplayer. They say that they're just going to look at a sample of what you send in. So there will not be instances where they simply take all the cards you send them and just put them all straight through to their mixed up inventory that they use to fulfill people's purchases through the direct program. So they are going to take some number of cards out and look at those cards, and then they're going to act as if that is representative of the error rate of your entire order, with the exception being if you've had too many errors in that little sample, then they'll inspect the entire order. And the way this typically works in industry is they do kind of the same thing. They'll do random sampling of a statistically significant amount that will give them an idea of, are you still manufacturing all your subcomponents to the right specifications? And if you ever go through and you start to build an additional part for the company, the additional parts don't automatically become part of your dock to stock privileges with the prime contractor. And so it's a little bit dangerous unless they have a couple other things in place in here to kind of control. And so one would be if all of a sudden Final Trade starts selling old Yu-Gi-Oh cards, which are notorious for their low quality, their inability to resist any kind of damage. And let's say all of a sudden I just started buying gobs of used Yu-Gi-Oh cards and fulfilling them through Direct. I don't even know that Yu-Gi-Oh is part of Direct, but let's pretend it is. Well, in that case, that would be a new product that I had no experience with, and TCGplayer should not allow me to fulfill those through this sampling process. And that's kind of one of the protections you would put in place. There's another kind of insidious issue that comes up with dock-to-stock programs, and it's that the buyer, in this place TCGplayer, needs to have some kind of incentive in place to prevent the subcontractor, or in this place me or anyone else being included in this program, from cheating. And so if they're only going to examine a sample of the cards that I send to them, they need some kind of intelligent way to keep me from wanting to cheat. Because the incentive that I would have is to take the most expensive single card from every RI and replace it with, say, instead of sending them a near mint, send them a light play. Sail it through, or send them a moderate play. And basically, I would pocket the difference in the value between those two conditions of cards. And it would not be until TCGplayer has already mixed those cards up in the rest of their inventory, and then they go to pull a copy of it to satisfy a direct order. and they would see, oh man, this card is actually moderately played, we can't use this, and they would eat that cost. And so there has to be some kind of incentive to prevent the sellers on direct from wanting to occasionally cheat. And part of that incentive is you have to maintain that 98% average accuracy rate if you're in the direct program in order to remain. Maybe that's enough, because if maybe they're smart about the way they do things and they always look through at, say, let's just say their random sample that they take is the X% highest value cards in your RI. Maybe that's the way they'll do it, and that will protect them from sellers being incentivized to cheat at the same time that they're taking the random sample. That may be a good way to do it. We'll go through real quick their fact. Why are they doing this? Well, the real reason why they're doing it is it allows them to cut labor costs. And if they're dealing with direct sellers who have long histories of very accurate fulfillment of RIs, then yes, they don't really need to be spending all those labor hours inspecting every 5-cent card. And so it really is about saving money, speeding things up, and being able to just streamline their business. A sample of the RI contents will be checked by our inspectors. The selection will be random. I hope for TCGplayer's sake the selection is not random. If an RI sample has significant errors, then it will be fully inspected. Will I know if it fails inspection? Well, basically right now, they don't have a way to tell you. And the total error rate in the monthly direct sales summary and discrepancy email will be all that you see. You'll get an overall error rate that they calculate from the sample that they do. And then if you have significant problems, they're going to figure out how that applies to your entire order. Does this impact my metrics? Yeah, error rates will be calculated based on the number of cards checked rather than the total number of cards. So that's probably the reasonable way to do it, since they're only checking a few cards. It's going to be a mixed bag in terms of implementation. I think this will turn out good, especially if they're careful about who they let into the program. If they only let people in who have a strong history of very high accuracy on their RIs, then yeah, this is not very much risk for TCGplayer. And if they give in to the temptation to expand the program too much, then they're going to find out how wide of an expansion ends up being a net loss for them. Because obviously at some point, if they just let, say, every seller who's recently joined direct and maybe doesn't have their business process down so efficiently yet, if they let all of them join this subgroup of partial inspection, then it will become costly to TCGplayer. So they have to be careful balancing how much money they're trying to save on labor versus how much money they're going to lose on missing cards that should have been caught if they were still inspecting the entirety of the RIs. Will this impact my workflow? Well, no, because it's all the changes are happening on TCGplayer side in New York. Will it impact buyers? It should not, because they still look at the cards before they send them out to the buyers. Now, obviously, we've all bought near-mint cards from Direct that look like they had a pan of cheesy bread spilled on them, but that notwithstanding, it shouldn't affect anything. Does it impact my standing? A seller still needs to maintain the 98% accuracy. So I think that even in the rare case that the couple of cards they randomly inspect out of your RI all happen to be the wrong variants or have some kind of damage, excessive damage to them or something like that, TCGplayer doesn't exactly just kick people out willy-nilly instantaneously. They are a pretty reasonable company about working with people, about giving folks an opportunity to fix things, and I don't think if they've had folks like Final Trade who have been making errors at a rate of about 1 in 1,000 cards for 18 months now, that I would be at any risk of getting kicked out if I had one inspection that statistically looked bad because it was a partial inspection. So overall, I think implementing a dock to stock type of program is a good idea. I think they will save money. Like any type of business change, you have a little bit of a turbulent period as you figure out how far can we push this and still have it be a net positive to the benefit, and where is the point before that where it optimizes the benefit to the business in terms of saved labor costs compared to increased costs of accepting cards that are damaged beyond what they should have been. So it's balancing act, and they'll figure it out. But it's cool to see them doing this kind of thing. I also got a questionnaire, a survey on the seller side of my TCG Player account a couple days ago from them about potential changes to their fee structures, replacing store your product with a consignment program, which would basically be the same as store your product, except the fees would be different. It was interesting to see that they're at least thinking about different ways to change up how they calculate fees, how that affects their business, how it might affect their sellers, and asking for feedback. So it's good to see that they're actually reaching out and looking for feedback like that to see if we have any ideas in the seller community of how some of these things might be improved. So, you know, when eBay bought TCGplayer, golly, 3 years ago now, I was very negative about it because eBay is a pretty bad company. It's difficult to work with. It's poorly run. Their website is a disaster of code dating back 25 years. And I was very pessimistic on the future of TCGplayer being owned by eBay. And thankfully, it seems like eBay has drawn some pretty stark lines in the sand of what TCGplayer will focus on in the market and what eBay will focus on. And it seems like that's been really good, that TCGplayer has overall remained in net good to work with. There are always going to be difficult times in a kind of customer-vendor relationship, but I think they've done an overall good job of balancing things and not going down the road of absolute enshittification like you expect every internet company to do. So it's been good to see, and it's good to see that even now in early 2025, they're still doing things like sending out surveys and seeing what sellers on the platform are interested in. They're trying new things. They're trying to streamline their business, and I hope it works out. I think it will. Let me know what you think, guys. Thanks to everyone who makes this content possible, especially my very generous supporters on Patreon. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and join me on Final Trade.